Excellencies and distinguished guests, Mesdames et Messieurs, Velkommen, Tikularit, Tungasugiti. A warm welcome to all of you. I'm very pleased to acknowledge our guests from Denmark and from Greenland, and as well as the indigenous, territorial, and provincial representatives who are with us today. The historic agreement we are here to celebrate is a testament to the cooperation among our peoples and of our joint commitment to resolve disputes amicably through dialogue and in accordance with established law. Avant le début de la cérémonie, je tiens à souligner que les terres sur lesquelles nous sommes rassemblés font partie du territoire traditionnel et non cédé du peuple Anishinaabe. To begin today's event, Inuit elder Jeppe Kofod will deliver a prayer and light the kulik.
Tema kuyanna meklo kakuya simatamriga tapunga katimanuksinno tema tanna kullaq ikumasak palleilugu ikipallengu yaqullugu tussianummi atungusukkama. As I'm lighting my kullaq, I will say a blessing. If you could close your eyes, sikungilota, say matingusukakuna katimana. Ikulugu tiata tawakila mechuti, ibisangani kinulagivunga, tako piluakto, tapunga tikisimatillo, pimmariutaw yui. Unga situmiutain, mani miutello, ilisaksina kaptillogi. Tasimingin nunatia valome, ibikisianatanel, tamakkoa, kisulima, silami, nunami, kisulima, tamakkoa, sanasimagavigi. Taana nunatia valo, ilisariyao ni aktillugu, kuviasiutao ni aktillugu, ibit, nayutitialauktigitakkoa, tapungat tamaunga tikisimayui, kanuingitiakullugin, Kinuisa kullugin, aswalullu, kuyalivugut, taimatiavalu, nunatiavalumik, ilisaksinakarniatillugin, tako tapunga tikisimayuin, taana ilinnut, atanir, kinuyutigivara, ipit, atanivit, jisusiup, kaletiusiup, atingani, pillutin. Amen. Tema.
Thank you. We will now proceed with remarks from the signatories. I invite First Minister Joly to the podium to deliver her remarks.
Hi. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you for the lighting of the coup. It's really a pleasure to be with all of you. Ça me fait plaisir de vous voir tous ici réunis pour cette journée historique. And of course, I would like to thank my colleague and dear friend, Jeppe, Minister Kofod, Jeppe for me, and for the friends here at home in Canada, and also to you, Prime Minister Mute, for coming here to participate in this very important announcement. Premier Akirguk, thank you for being here. Mon cher Dan, Minister Vandal. Natan, it's been such a long time. I'm really happy to see you here. Aluki also, thank you for being here and your strong advocacy. It's always a pleasure to see you in Ottawa. And I think also MP is here, so thank you for being with us today. Alors on sait que l'Arctique est une région qui est caractérisée par la paix, par la coopération et par la stabilité. Et avec les pays de l'Arctique, on travaille tous les jours ensemble pour protéger l'environnement, défendre notre souveraineté et faire progresser la réconciliation avec les peuples autochtones. Now today we're resolving a 50-year-old dispute. 26 foreign ministers have worked on this file. Yes, you can laugh. There was something. And so we're ending the dispute that for many, called the Whiskey War. And so I think it was the friendliest of all wars. I'm happy to see that we're resolving it with friends, partners, and allies. Denmark, Greenland, and obviously Canada. Et donc, on met terme à une dispute qui date de plus de 50 ans. Il y a 26 ministres des Affaires étrangères qui ont travaillé sur cette question. Pendant longtemps, on a appelé cette dispute la guerre du whisky. Parce qu'il y avait cette tradition-là où les Canadiens laissaient leur drapeau sur l'île de Hans en Arctique et laissaient en même temps une bouteille de whisky et une petite note. Et 6 mois plus tard, les Danois prenaient notre drapeau, déposaient le leur et nous laissaient une bouteille de schnapps avec une petite note. Ça fait plus de 50 ans que ça dure. It's been 50 years that we've been there on Hans Island, exchanging notes and whiskey bottles while putting our own flags. And now we can say that there will be 2 flags, and actually all the same colors. And so therefore, it is good news. It is also happening at a very important time in our history, because we know that authoritarian leaders believe that they can use force and they can draw boundaries by force. But we know that we can work together through diplomacy to settle disputes based on rules and principles. And I think this is worth a round of applause because this is historic and important. So we're shining light on the fact that we've agreed, based on the great work of our negotiators, and Alan, I wanted to give you a shout out, and to everyone at Global Affairs who have worked for years on this. But now we have a new land and maritime border, almost 4,000 kilometers, the longest maritime border in the world. And also, we've been able to settle the issue of this small but important island in the Arctic, which is called Hans Island. So it's a win-win-win. It's a win for Canada, it's a win for Denmark and Greenland. It is a win also for Indigenous people. It brings a lot of clarity, and it brings a lot of previsibility. It, of course, maintains access and freedom of movement for Inuit and local people, and I know that Aluki will be talking about that a bit later. And it shows fundamentally that through negotiation, dialogue, and good faith, we're able to settle important and difficult issues. So, just again, thank you so much. Merci beaucoup, and I'll drink to that. Thank you.
Minister, thank you very much for your remarks. I'd now like to invite Minister Kofod to deliver his remarks. Please.
Well, first of all, Mélanie, my friend, thank you so much for having us here today on this very historical moment in both of Greenland, Denmark, and Canada's history. And thank you to all of you who are here. I think it's such a great testimony to how we can deal with issues in a peaceful manner, in a productive manner, based on international law. Today, I think, marks really, and I'm very happy for that, a milestone in our cooperation. It's also, in a way, a great pleasure to be here personally, because I know, like Mélanie also alluded to, that for more than 50 years, changing government has tried to resolve our border issue peacefully. We had this, what we call whiskey war, which was good-humored, I think, peaceful exchange of our messages, friendship to each other by placing a bottle on the island and whenever it was visited. But as peaceful as this is, and this has been, even that kind of battle needs an end. And today we'll just putting our signatures to a treaty and thereby marking the end of the whiskey war and exchanging the last 2 bottles. I look forward to that. This is indeed a very important step, in particular to our peoples in the north, who lived in some of the greatest nature on earth, and often see things in a different perspective. We have listened, we have learned, and perhaps man-made boundaries matters only that much. More important is the cooperation between people. And I'm proud that this common vision of a stronger cooperation is reflected in our agreement. Today, we are at the end of a long chapter, but perhaps more importantly, we are at the beginning of a new chapter. At the same time, the rule-based international order is under pressure. The values that we all share in this room, our democratic values, our care for each other, our peaceful settlement of things, and basic values that both Canada and the Kingdom of Denmark sets very high, these are under attack globally. But we have been able to peacefully solve something as sensitive, which it is, as a territorial dispute, based on rules laid down in international law. We have managed to settle these issues without lawsuits or international arbitration, for example, and this sent a strong signal. Diplomacy and the rule of law actually works. And that great result can be achieved by following the agreed rules. As we stand here today, we see gross violation of international rules unfold in another part of the world. In contrast, we have demonstrated how long-standing international disputes can be resolved peacefully and playing by the rules. And may this message, this agreement, inspire other countries to follow the same path. Think about it. What type of earth we'll be living in if that was the case. This is a fair deal made in the spirit of the Inuit Declaration and in the spirit of excellent neighborly relations. We have a common ambition to contribute to the goal of the Arctic as a low-tension area and to pave the way for even stronger cooperation in the region to benefit of the people living in the Arctic. And I believe today we will achieve both. And allow me also to thank the teams that have been so involved and working day and night, years over years, months, weeks, days, to finalize this agreement. We owe you all, which are in the room today, a big thank for all of the work you have done. It's really also showing how we can work together on a practical level to solve these issues in a very good manner. So Mélanie, friends, I'm proud to be here today. It is, for me as a foreign minister from Denmark, a historical moment, and it is for me personally also a great pleasure to be here in this fantastic setting and celebrate this historical day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kofod. I'd now like to invite Prime Minister Ego to give his remarks.
Today, we have turned a chapter in history. I am both pleased and proud that we, together with Canada and Denmark, have found a good solution on Tartupaluk, and that we have established Greenland's first border on land, and not least established the longest maritime boundary in the world. A solution to a border dispute has been reacted in a very peaceful manner. I would like to thank Canada and Denmark for very constructive negotiations. In these difficult times, this agreement shows the rest of the world how to solve disputes in a peaceful manner and in respect of international law and order. With our shared history and cultural ties to Inuit in Canada, it is only natural that we cooperate to find new ways to strengthen our ties. I would like to stress that this boundary does not separate Greenland and Canada. On the contrary, the boundary can be a stepping stone to truly connect our two countries, and the Inuit, whose family live together, can be on the same place again and share the land. To do this, we need to work together to find a solution to the challenges regarding the mobility between Inuit in Canada and Greenland. I hope this can be something that we can achieve in the near future. This day marks the beginning of a much closer cooperation on several levels. Cooperation between Greenland and Canada, and not least cooperation between Inuit in and Nunavut. Trade and investment is one of several areas that I would like to highlight where we look forward to exploring possibilities of cooperation with Canada. I know that there is a wish from our people in northern part of Greenland, Inuit, to be able to go and see their families and friends in Nunavut. With these words, the government of Greenland invites Canada to work with us to look into the possibilities of mobility sharing between our two countries. As close neighbors, and with our history in mind, we should cooperate more together. Bueno.
I now invite the signatories and witnesses to take their respective positions around the signature table. The signatories are Madame the Honourable Mélanie Joly, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Canada, His Excellency Jeppe Kofod, Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Kingdom of Denmark, and His Excellency Mute Egwood, Prime Minister of Greenland. These signatories are accompanied by a number of distinguished witnesses to the ceremony, and I would like to acknowledge the presence of the Honourable Dan Van Daal, Minister of Northern Affairs. The Honourable P.J. Agyapok, Premier of Nunavut. Paul Pike, Parliamentary Assistant to the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. Her Excellency Vivian Motzfeldt, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Business and Trade of Greenland. Natan Obed, President of the Inuit Tapiri Kanatami. Aluki Kutierek, President of Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated. Richard Payton, Senior Director for the Kikitani Inuit Association. Mr. Hans Peter Barla Christensen, Permanent Secretary to the Prime Minister, Office of the Prime Minister of Greenland. Mr. Kenneth Hu, Head of Representation to the Greenland Representation in Washington, D.C. Ms. Ulyok Munvad Gessen, Head of Office, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Business and Trade of Greenland. Ms. Nana Nevi Pedersen, Legal Advisor, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Business and Trade of Greenland. Ms. Nasnagwak Beck Christensen, Medical Secretary to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Business and Trade of Greenland. And finally, Mr. Angutikgwak Titusen, Personal Secretary to the Prime Minister, Office of the Prime Minister of Greenland. Welcome to all of you. We are witnessing the signature of the agreement between the Government of Canada on the one hand and the Government of the Kingdom of Denmark, together with the Government of Greenland on the other hand, on the marine, maritime and land boundaries in the area between Greenland and Canada. Nous témoignons la signature de l'accord entre le gouvernement du Canada d'une part et le gouvernement du Royaume de Danemark avec le gouvernement d'autre part sur les frontières maritimes et terrestres de la zone située entre le Groenland et le Canada.
That was the whole point.
ministers to make one final exchange.
So, here you go. Well, you know, I'll take it. So, that's it. And you know, that's your small notes, because people need to need notes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Good, perfect. Well, you know that, it's going straight to the Museum of History. Province of Quebec. So it's a whiskey, but it's maple whiskey. Uh-huh.
So no more whiskey wars, no Inuit.
So I'd like to invite the ministers and the ceremonial witnesses to return to their seats and invite Minister Van Dal to the podium to deliver his remarks. Minister Van Dal.
Okay, what a great occasion. Kwekwe, Uglukut, Tansi, bonjour, and hello. I want to begin by acknowledging that the land we are on is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I also want to acknowledge the elder for her wonderful ceremony, Prime Minister, ministers, Premier, Premier or Secretary, other distinguished guests. Today is a very important day. Not only does this ceremony mark a peaceful and an amicable end to a long-standing diplomatic dispute between our countries, but it is an agreement with the rights of Inuit in Canada and Denmark at its heart. Inuit have hunted on the island, which they call Tartupaluk, since the 14th century. Their rights to visit and use the island must be recognized and respected, and that's what this agreement will do. Agreements like the one being signed today are important for Canada's relationship with Indigenous people, and I'm proud to be part of a government that recognizes, that advocates and reaffirms their rights and traditional territories. The agreement is win-win for all parties involved. Canada and Denmark share a rich and cooperative history, and it is only fitting, and indeed only a matter of time, that an equitable solution like this was reached based on both practicality and compromise. I want to commend the Kingdom of Denmark for negotiating in good faith and also respecting the rights of Inuit. Today has been an excellent step in our shared path forwards towards reconciliation, as well as a good example of global cooperation. Congratulations to all the parties involved. Thank you, merci, and miigwech.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dal. I'd like now to invite Premier Akiago to the podium. Thank you, sir.
Unusakon pojaname mika pigiaro diavalum pigiaro de hapit tawabin. For we are to mo to mekatik kata ko bimarin itu to hapita. It is a true pleasure to be join everybody here, Prime Minister, dignitaries, ministers, Mr. Obed, Ms. Kofod. The Government of Nunavut welcomes Canada and the Kingdom of Denmark's cooperative, collaborative, and peaceful efforts in reaching an agreement on the outstanding boundary dispute on the Lincoln Sea as well as Tartupaluk. This agreement is a significant step to further deepen and strengthen the already close relationship between Canada and the Kingdom of Denmark, as well as between Nunavut and Greenland. The Government of Nunavut is also excited to learn about the new changes to our territory's boundaries, to see this agreement as a benefit to Inuit and the local communities. Our government is encouraged to see The agreement calls for continued access to and freedom of movement on the entirety of Taktopalu, including for hunting, fishing, and related cultural, traditional, and historic other activities for Inuit of Nunavut as well as Kalafi Nuna. We are also pleased by the agreement's recognition of existing bilateral cooperation agreements, particularly relating to Inuit mobility and freedom of movement between the waters and the ongoing work on joint management of Sabazua or Bikalasusua. I am eager for decisions about Nunavut being made in the territory by Nunavumnu as we embark on the devolution for our territory as well. Similarly, I look forward to deepening these relationships in the months and the years ahead as we build even stronger ties between Canada and Denmark and Nunavut and Greenland. So with that, Poyanami and congratulations.
I'd now like to invite Parliamentary Assistant Pike.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to first of all say thank you for the kind invitation to be part of this signing ceremony. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador is honored to participate in this historic event. It is a privilege for me to have the opportunity, as Parliamentary Assistant to Premier Andrew Fiore, to speak to the assembled officials, dignitaries, and guests of the Government of Canada and the Kingdom of Denmark. I would like to congratulate the federal government and Denmark for achieving resolution of a question over a boundary line in the waters between Canada and Greenland. The Joint Task Force on Boundary Issues was instrumental in looking at the variety of options and resulting negotiations, produced recommendations that addressed long-standing issues. This diligent work was necessary towards settling the maritime boundary dispute in the Lincoln Sea. Modernization of the maritime boundary line, sovereignty of Hans Island, as well as the boundary line in the Labrador Sea and continental shelf overlap. As a province and a government, Newfoundland and Labrador applauds the respectful approach which Canada and Denmark have taken as leaders in the Arctic region to settle issues in a peaceful manner and in accordance with international law. The importance of collaboration between neighboring nations cannot be overstated during a time when aggression and war has caused widespread devastation and upheaval in the lives of our Ukrainian friends. In conclusion, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador commends Canada and Denmark for overcoming its differences and setting a course for renewed cooperation and friendship. Again, thank you for allowing us to be here today.
Thank you. In 2018, our three countries agreed to establish a joint task force to resolve our outstanding boundary issues with Canada. It is a pleasure to see that the task force that I, on behalf of Nunavut, was part of, established together with Denmark and Canada, has reached the goal of their work. I am both happy and proud that we, together with Canada and Denmark, have found a good solution on Taktopalu, and that we have established Greenland's first border on land, and not least established the longest maritime boundary in the world in a peaceful and constructive way. It is our hope that this agreement can pave the way to further strengthening cooperation between Inuit in Avanaswa and Nunavut. In 2020 and again in 2022, a delegation went to Ghana and Siorabaru, the northernmost settlement in the world, to gather knowledge from Inuit in Avanaswa on the traditional and historic use of Taktubaru and the area surrounding it. During these two excursions, Avanaswa Mute have clearly expressed our wish, which is to re-establish their ties with their friends and families in Nunavut. Avanaswa Mute talked with utmost warmth about the time they used to have social exchange with Matimeteri Ipiasu Krisifio. To Inuit in Avanaswa and Nunavut, I want to say that we have heard you. With this word, the government of Greenland invites Canada to look into the possibilities of mobility scheme between Nunavut and Greenland. Let us turn the next chapter together on this historic day. Thank you. Bueno.
Kuya namimika, kuya sa kataw dari tumatag na kataw na kama at ilaw taw tito taman na takto paro mixan. Inu luta inu naking ngaro yara kita ajili ni tunen na kawara kita inu inaw kata kuya kita kita taman na at ilaw taw yok naruna sisimang man Inuit nunaming ngatu kalati nunaning ngatu lo isumaksok lutik nunamin tareong sikumi atau kata unang nangin ni, teme itu nara kata inulutan. Ikai titi yumabunga, nona kang nara kata simayu ukiok tak tumi, aku cakap tu piju cakap tu inung ni, tema nidel nak kata tu, tema kanata ukiok tak tumi utang nara kata tu ubagu pidu. Teme man ilisa rayau yud angeroti. Tanata me tadle mau mata inong ne atilio kata kaksimadlotik iloani nunavo iloani tosolo angerotiu pihiang ningani ilisaksi yok Inuit kanong ato kataksimani kong mangata nunamin amaru ilako ngayo 15 me naruner si material lune inong luta sibulutyo luta o kao sa kakataksimayo ukyo takto kanong sapudyo kanang nakayang mga so luuk tu tigilugo ICC kutigo katimana takaraw simayu ku joami 2008 wantilu katiluti kanok ukyok takto sapudyo kanang nakayang mga tekan nga rusak tilaw simayu 2009 min naruner si simaluta kanok ilaw kanang nakayang mga ta Inuit mana mo tigilugo 2022 wantilu inuluta ilaw yumayigo pang nagsimayigo ilaw katektiyaw maluta narunayak kanang naktaka manalon ni kanataw iluani gawa matokat ko ministeri katimakati kakatatigo ino nanganing nga simaluta isumagiyabud taman na sila joa pilariyaw kataktilugo pilari kanang nang ningini ilaw kanang nang ningini Inuit kuya namityak tigo taman na atilok taw yun naman. Congratulations, we're so pleased to be a part of the signing of this significant agreement. In Inuktut, we have the concept of Baaya Katigingna, coming to a decision making through the process of collaboration and consensus building. So it's really great to see that the Kingdom of Greenland and Canada decided to use the concept of Baaya Katigingna. We as Inuit are particularly pleased with the recognition that Inuit from Nunavut, Inuit from Kanatli Nuna are able to freely move using the land, the waters, the ice in the ways that they choose to do so. As Inuit, we are international peoples. We are one nation that transcends many international borders. Often, when we're talking about Arctic sovereignty, we recognize the important role that Inuit have played, and that the role that we've played in Arctic sovereignty. And this is recognized, for instance, in Canada through the signing of the 5 Inuit agreements, particularly in Nunavut, with our Nunavut agreement. In our preamble, there's a provision that recognizes Inuit contributions to Canada's history, Canada's identity, as well as Arctic sovereignty. In addition, there's a recognition in Article 15 of Canada's sovereignty and Inuit contribution to the sovereignty over the waters of the archipelago. And I point this out because I think it's really important to recognize Inuit contribution to Arctic sovereignty and for nations who purport themselves as Arctic nations. Arctic nations would not be Arctic nations without us, Inuit Arctic peoples. As Arctic leaders, as Inuit leaders, we have a sustained discussion about Arctic sovereignty and Arctic security. In 2008, Inuit leaders met in Kuujjuaq in Nunavut to discuss Arctic sovereignty, which resulted in the Circumpolar Inuit Declaration on Arctic Sovereignty in 2009. Here in Canada, as Inuit leaders of Inuit Nunavut, we work with the federal government through the Inuit Crown Partnership Committee, and currently we're looking at having a working group specifically on international Inuit affairs. And I look to you, Minister Joly, to co-chair such an important working group, because it is crucially important and necessary that Inuit are involved in Arctic sovereignty and Arctic security. I want to end by congratulating you again for using Ayakatigina and coming to a point where we're able to sign off on this agreement. And really last, Tamawa kanata motiki simayu, kalatli nunani ngatsmayu, ino kativut, ilavut, tikit loaresti. Ayan namin.
That brings to an end our remarks, but I would now like to invite Elder David Sakowick to perform a dance for us.
Matna, David Sakowick yung unyukatsak. Mumira nama ingwit takaliwala ka na ulumi ingati kuga mamia na wala kini takon na kitiwem hatunga Inuit mumiro hiat pero kan mamik kaya hutya ka kai ko yama unukatsia
This concludes our signature ceremony today. Ceci conclut la cérémonie de la signature. And now I'd like to invite both ministers back to the podium for any questions from the media. Thank you.
Hello, bonjour. Effectivement, nous allons maintenant commencer la conférence de presse. We will now begin the press conference. We invite media to go to the microphone to ask your question. That you state with which media you're associated and to whom your question is directed. We'll allow for one question and one follow-up. Nous allons commencer par les gens dans la salle et ensuite aller sur la ligne de téléconférence. Nous vous demandons de poser une question et une question suivie. Merci.
I wonder if you could comment on the implications of sharing a land border with Denmark, Mr. Joly, and therefore with Europe. And I wonder if this might mean that Canada would qualify to join the Eurovision Song Contest.
I think, Mary, you read my note, because that's exactly what I wrote when giving the whiskey bottle. I said we're, the closest ever to the EU, so now we will join the Eurovision contest next year. Because there was this tradition of exchanging bottles, but also of a lot of humor in the small notes that the armed forces would exchange with the Danish ones. So of course it's an important day. It's an important day, why? Because for all the reasons you've heard, but including the fact that we're shining light on the importance of diplomacy in the world. And many of us have mentioned the importance of, yes, the international rules-based order, but fundamentally, it is possible to settle a disagreement. And it's always the best way to do it through principles and norms that both parties recognize, and that we can do that through diplomacy. And so at the end of this process, not only the process is important, but it becomes a win-win situation. And in this context, it's a win-win-win situation, because you've heard Haluki also talking about the importance of Inuit people being at the table. I think also that it is important because we're setting a precedent. We're showing to other countries how territorial disputes can be solved. And we know, and my colleague Jeppe referred to this, Minister Kofod referred to this, that we need to keep the Arctic a low-tension region. It is really important to do so. It's a collective security that is at stake. So by doing this, Canada and Denmark and Greenland are also sending a clear message to other Arctic states. And so yes, we have a border with the EU now. Yes, we'll be participating, I hope, to the Eurovision contest, but also we're sending a message to another neighbor up north when it comes to Arctic sovereignty. Thank you.
Yeah, just add a few remarks. First of all, I would very much welcome, if I could, Canada to the European Song Contest. Although we will have competition, but it will be competition in a very good way. No, I think it's really great. It's really great. Listen, I think just add to what Mélanie, what Minister Joly just said. Sometimes, in the world that we are in, we see that it's the force of the strongest that prevail and change borders. But what we see here is we come together around collective values that we should not take for granted, because these values are under attack. It's values that are based on international law, respect of all people, different cultures, states, and so on, and the equality of us sitting together, finding a solution that we all are winners of. I think that's very important. And then also in this particular case, we see that we founded a boundary that has been disputed for a long time. But actually, that act will make us come more together. So contrary to what boundaries normally do, is divide people, this is bringing us much closer together. And I think the next chapter we will uncover by this agreement for all of us will be a chapter of cooperation where Canada, Greenland and Denmark can stand much closer together and set a precedent, inspiration and a strong signal to the rest of the world, not least the Arctic world, that things can be resolved peacefully where everybody wins. So I think that's really a historical day. So thank you, and it might end our whiskey war, but it will start a new, I would say, era of friendship and cooperation that I think is very important.
I'm agreed with some of the words, but I think the most important here, the two states, the Denmark and Canada, have listened and seen the Inuit, because we have always shared our countries, our land, our animals, the nature, Chita. So now, with this agreement today, we show the rest of the world that people can share and live together peacefully and together with the nature. I think it should be one of the key messages to the rest of the world. We can do it in a diplomatic way, we can do it in low tension way, but the most important is we share our land again. And it reflects that Inuit always have think that we share everything with together.
Just to follow on your remarks, Prime Minister, as it was noted that the Hans Island has been part of traditional Inuit hunting grounds since the 14th century, and it's known as territorial. Apologies for my pronunciation. I wondered if there's any talk about renaming it its traditional Inuit name in the negotiations. And could I also ask whether there will be further negotiations about increasing mobility between Inuit from Nunavut and Greenland, which is something I believe was on the table?
Yes, it is, but to change the name, I think to respect our elders, we should, and the Inuit on the series, we should call it Dr. Badu. And if we want to change it, it's up to the Inuit in the area. But I think that this is one of the stepping stones to be more connected together with our fellow Inuits in Nunavut and in Canada, and the rest of Canada. And I hope that is one of the key messages to Canada that let us start the new era with more cooperation together.
And to answer your question, yes, the next step is to make sure that there is better freedom of movement and your cooperation. So now that we've turned the page on the whiskey war, we're starting a new chapter, and of course we'll work with Minister Van Dal on this, Nathan Obed, with Aluki, with Prime Minister, with all the people that are here. So, you know, basically the discussions don't end, actually. They continue, and I think with great spirit.
If there are other questions in the room, we ask that you go to the middle. Seeing none, on the premier question sur la ligne britannique, you can move to the questions from the top of the slide.
I think I've answered all the questions. Bon? Adrien, est-ce que c'est bon?
Questions online, please?
Thank you. We will now take questions from the telephone lines. If you have a question and you're using a speakerphone, please lift your hands up before making your selection. If you have a question, please press *1 on your device's keypad. So please press *1 at this time. If you have a question, there will be a brief reminder There will be a brief pause while the participants register for questions. We thank you for your patience. So once again, if you have a question, please press *1 on the device's keypad. The first question is from David Lockett from Nunavut News. Please go ahead, your line is open.
Hi there. This is a question for Mr. Joly. I'd like to get your response on Chair President Co-Chair called just now for you to be involved in a committee on international Inuit affairs.
I think it's a good idea. I think Luki has always great ideas. And I think it would be a pleasure for me to work with Minister Van Dal on this issue. Indeed, when thinking of Arctic sovereignty, we cannot refer to the concept without thinking about Inuit themselves. We know that there are lots of conversations happening regarding Arctic sovereignty right now. And so at the core of our foreign policy is people, Canadians, and when we think about Arctic foreign policy, we think about Indigenous people, and Inuit in particular. So let's work together and let's make this happen.
Great, thank you. And my follow-up would be, has it been determined which part the Canadian part of the island will be a part of when it comes to whether it's a part of Nunavut or Newfoundland and Labrador, or if there be any other type of classification for it?
So there will be a devolution agreement, and I'll work with Minister Van Dal on this. But Hans Island obviously is closer to the Arctic and clearly linked to Nunavut. I think the Premier would be really mad if I just announced that that was not the case.
Thank you.
Another negotiation.
Thank you. And once again, please press *1 on the device's keypad if you have a question. The next question is from Ashley Bird from CBC News. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Thank you. Minister Joly and as well the Danish Minister Kofod, what message do you want to send to Russia's President Vladimir Putin about this agreement?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, thank you for the question. Really, this sent a message to, as I said, to the Arctic. We have to remind ourselves that the Russian Federation is an Arctic coastal state as well, with responsibilities to abide international law. It sends a message to the world, and also including President Putin, that when there are things that you're disputing over, you have to make the resolution based on international law, not by the law of force, but by the force of law, and also in constructive, conducive manner, where all will separate as winners, go from to an agreement, become winners. So I hope that this very important agreement for Greenland, for Canada, for Kingdom of Denmark, will inspire the rest of the world to look, as I also said initially, into peaceful resettlement, and also understanding the value of international law, multilateralism, good neighborhood relations in a time where these values are under attack and where we cannot take them for granted. So I think timing-wise, what we're doing here today, which is historical for all of us in this room, but it's also timing-wise globally a very good message. So I hope that message will get to President Putin, although I'm not naive about what messages he takes.
Well, clearly what we're showing today is that you don't redraw boundaries through the barrel of a gun. It is not a principle to think, how can I say, might makes right doesn't work in this world. It's always a lose-lose situation. And so we can agree. We can agree when we follow the rules of the game. And we think that we're stronger because we do things. And therefore, what we're sending President Putin, what we're saying to President Putin today, actually, is that we have the best way to settle disputes, that we are setting a precedent. We know we're neighbors to Russia. We know that very well. But now we're stronger together because we have a good agreement. And now we have a united front in front of him. 7 of the 8 Arctic nations also are part of NATO or will become part of NATO very soon. And so what we want to do is to relaunch the conversation of the Arctic Council. That was done this week. Our officials have met for the first time. Jeppe and I had the chance to talk about what are the next steps for the Arctic Council also, because we want to continue to keep the momentum. And meanwhile, we expect Russia to abide by the rule and to make sure ultimately that we keep the Arctic a low-tension region. We cannot fall into the trap of militarizing the Arctic. This is very important for us Canadians. This is important for the world.
And for my follow-up question, the Prime Minister of Greenland asked, what does this agreement mean for Inuit? Does it change anything right now?
So one more.
Ashley, can you repeat, please? We could not hear you well. The Prime Minister could not hear you well.
What does this deal really mean for the Inuit? Does it change anything right now?
It's a very, very important agreement because Inuit, as I say before, that Inuit in Ellesmere and in Nunavut have always shared these land areas. So, but it's also a next step to have a more cooperation together with Inuit, together in Greenland and in Canada, but also between Greenland and Canada. So it's very, very important deal we have today.
I think there's another question on the phone line.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Marie Fisiachi from CBC North. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Ms. Fisiachi, you might be on mute.
Hello.
Once again.
Yes. Rita?
Next question, Marie Fisiachi from CBC North. Please go ahead. The line is open.
Rita Fish with CBC North. My question is, what can a symbolic gesture like this really do for other disputes or future disputes?
I think that we refer to this as being historic. Why? Because it's been 50 years that there's been negotiation of this friendly war between Denmark and Canada. And for 50 years, lots of diplomats have worked on this. And when Alan from the team came to see me and said, I think we have an agreement, Minister, I laughed. I couldn't believe that we were actually able to settle this very important issue. And we wanted to give momentum, particularly in light of February 24th, what happened with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And so it's symbolic because at the time where it's happening, as we're seeing that there's an illegal and unjustifiable invasion. Second, it is important because we're setting a precedent, like I said before. And third, I think that we're showing today that we can work together and solve problems. This is what Canada has been standing for. We've participated and benefited from multilateralism since the Second World War, for sure. And we want to continue to build the architecture and also to make sure that we're the engineers of this system, which is so fundamental to keep stability in our world.
As I said, I mean, it's not the border in itself, it's the fact that the process leading to settling this dispute is based on international law, based on strong constructive cooperation between the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland, and Canada, and in a way where we also really had good cooperation with the people that is all about living in the area, which I think is the most important. So I think we have to understand in the world that we are in that many people are very focusing on boundaries and trying to divide people, even try to conquer other countries to change boundaries. What we do here is to sit together peacefully and find a way where we all can live together, despite the fact that we all need state boundaries, because that's how our international community works. But it doesn't have to be in a way where we see wars or disputes going to a conflictual level where there will be winners and losers. So in this case, I think we're all winners, and in that sense, the signal to the world that if you sit together, based on international law, we can all be winners. That is what the world needs to hear in these times, with Russian aggression, with autocrats all over the world trying to change the rule of law to their own benefit. And we have to counter that narrative, and we do that today here in Oslo, and I'm very proud of being part of that.
This agreement shows that we can be agreed when we listen together, when we are taught together, based on the international law, but also when we are listening to the indigenous people, Inuit. So I think it's a very historical step that shows the rest of the world and the Arctic states that we, Canada, Denmark and Greenland, are still based on the Ellesmere Declaration to keep active on the low tension area.
Is there a follow-up question?
Thank you. Once again, please press star 1 on the device's keypad if you have a question. Please press star 1.
On m'informe qu'il n'y a pas d'autres questions sur le fin à la conférence de presse. This is an end to our press conference. Thank you very much.